Most people would be surprised to know it's not an excellent predictor of your risk of having a heart attack. People think, oh, cholesterol causes heart attacks, but in fact, if you look at the
Mm.
numbers, having high cholesterol is not by no means a crystal ball, and not a great predictor of whether or not you're actually going to have a heart attack. And similarly, lowering cholesterol levels with medication, for example, does not necessarily change your risk or lower your risk of having a heart attack. So that
Mm.
really sort of begs the question then, why are we focusing on it so much? This is a fiber, and like I mentioned, it's a
Okay.
prebiotic. So a great way to adapt to any new fiber in your diet is by starting with a small amount, letting the microbiome adjust, and then gradually working your way up.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode number 26 of the Healthy Habit Podcast in our part 2 discussion with Dr. Kate Rhéaume, author, naturopathic doctor, graduate and former faculty member of the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in Toronto, CCNM. Dr. Kate lectures internationally on many topics related to health and wellness, and she's a frequent guest on radio and TV across North America. She is the author of the best-selling book, Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox, How a Little-Known Vitamin Could Save Your Life. Welcome back, Dr. Kate, to episode number 26. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thanks, Dr. Dan. Nice to be back.
Today, we want to take a completely new take on heart health, Dr. Kate. We're going to say move over cholesterol, go a little bit deeper, because I think we can agree that it's not just about cholesterol. We can't just judge someone's heart health based on their total cholesterol levels. You got to look a little bit more information than that, right? Give us a little intro here.
Definitely, yes. I mean, arguably the focus in the conventional approach has been almost exclusively on cholesterol. Not totally, but there's been such a focus there that it's almost led us astray in the fight against heart disease. Blood pressure aside, yes, that's an important thing to focus on, but cholesterol, most people would be surprised to know it's not an excellent predictor of your risk of having a heart attack. People think, oh, cholesterol causes heart attacks, but in fact, if you look at the
Mm.
numbers, having high cholesterol is not by no means a crystal ball, and not a great predictor of whether or not you're actually going to have a heart attack. And similarly, lowering cholesterol levels with medication, for example, does not necessarily change your risk or lower your risk of having a heart attack. So that
Mm.
really sort of begs the question then, why are we focusing on it so much? There really are other more functional approaches to heart health.
Right, and they've been lowering the reference ranges apparently over the last several decades to now it's below 199 according to the American units. I don't know right now where it would be in millimoles per liter or deciliter in Canadian units. Can you give us that?
I meant to brush up on the American
Okay,
Canadian units because I only know the Canadian ones. But
right.
the point is that threshold for when a statin medication is prescribed keeps going down and down and down. And so that means more and more and more people are taking these medications. And
Hmm.
yet again, the research suggests for primary heart attack prevention, in other words, if you've never had a heart attack, reducing the risk of having a first heart attack doesn't seem to really be there.
Hmm. Got it. So then tell us what other markers we should be looking at then. And obviously people need to work with their doctor on this, but you can take notes on this and bring it to your doc and say, hey, can we take a look at some of these numbers that I read online or watched a video on? What are some other numbers to support that total cholesterol?
Mm-hmm. You mean in terms of what should we be looking at instead of cholesterol,
Right, like
or?
in the blood.
Oh,
Hmm.
yes. Well, first of all, blood pressure, not that that is something that we get out of a blood
Sure.
test, but blood pressure, very
Okay.
important.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Monitor it, keep it managed by whatever means necessary. If you have high blood pressure, take your medication as recommended. Blood pressure is super important. In terms of blood work, so if we're not looking at cholesterol, then what? Well, it's not that we can completely disregard cholesterol. The
Right.
ratio between good and bad, so-called good and bad cholesterol, so HDL and LDL. So if somebody has high LDL, which is what we call the bad cholesterol, but it's really not. We can talk about that. But they also have high HDL. I'm not concerned about that.
Mm.
I had some people recently, and again, these are the Canadian numbers, so you'll have to let me know.
Right.
Somebody said, well, my cholesterol was 6.5, my LDL, but my HDL was 4. I was like, wow, that's excellent HDL. I'm really not
Yeah.
concerned. That ratio between the HDL and LDL is important.
And
And then
right.
again, if your LDL, what really matters is that LDL, we call it bad cholesterol, but it really only becomes bad once it's oxidized. Then it can be problematic. So prevent your cholesterol from becoming oxidized. So then whatever cholesterol you have is always good. It's always working for you and not against you. So that's cholesterol oxidation is as important as anything.
How does cholesterol get oxidized? What are some ways to not let that happen?
Yeah, there's few ways that cholesterol can get oxidized. Lack of antioxidants is the biggest one. Antioxidants protect against oxidation. So having lots of antioxidants is helpful in the body. Sometimes when cholesterol has been circulating for too long and it doesn't attach to its receptors, like the parking spot keeps driving around, that is something that can promote cholesterol oxidation. And but generally, anything that we do is beneficial on both of those ends. But really, antioxidants are a big one and relatively easy to remedy.
Tell us about a product like PGX, how this can play a role in this.
Mm-hmm. So PGX stands for polyglycoplex. It's a combination of three soluble fibers. It's a unique combination of fibers that do a number of things. I mean, it was originally touted as a weight loss, and it absolutely has a lot of clinical research to back up the fact that, yes, it helps to maintain a healthy weight. That's for sure. And that is generally helpful for, heart health risk factors, but it does a few other things as well. It helps to manage blood sugar, which is super important when it comes to heart health, maintaining healthy, stable blood sugar levels. And really, when it comes to cholesterol, yes, so studies have shown it has an ability to lower cholesterol and improve various markers of like blood lipids. And it does this by an interesting way, which is by being essentially a prebiotic or beneficial fiber in the intestines. And then, through a series of steps that causes the body to, or encourages the body to let go of or release cholesterol.
Hmm.
So that's really interesting, the mechanism. So obviously PGX is doing a number of things that are overall good for metabolic health.
And so this can maybe help with balancing the ratios that you mentioned. It's not just about the total cholesterol. We're looking at HDL, LDL, and the trigs, the triglycerides as well.
Exactly.
So because what I've seen a lot over and over and over again in my initial blood panels with patients is high LDL and low, literally L off the charts, low HDL. How do
Oh,
we get that balanced? Would
yeah.
PGX help?
Right. Yes, it does. And so that's the problem, right? We want to have the
Right.
good cholesterol come up, then we're less concerned about the so-called bad cholesterol. Keep the bad cholesterol from being oxidized, then it's not really that bad. But yes, you're right. So the PGX is helpful there in that department. So that, again, coming to that ratio of beneficial versus potentially harmful cholesterol.
Okay, so PGX, if I'm not mistaken, has it works it up in dosage, like week 1, week 2, and then week 3 and beyond, right? We should build up to it, and why is that?
Typically, well, this is a fiber, and like I mentioned, it's a
Okay.
prebiotic. So when you take this, it will change for the better the balance in your microbiome. And so if you take a whole lot on the first day, that can throw off the balance or alter the balance too quickly. So a great way to adapt to any new fiber in your diet is by starting with a small amount, letting the microbiome adjust, and then gradually working your way up. And so that is, yeah, that's just a gradual way
Yeah.
to allow your microbiome to adapt.
I think that's smart. It's so true. Like even with psyllium husk capsules, I've seen that with patients as well, where they tried doubling or tripling the initial dose right away, and
Yeah.
it was not feeling good, more
Mhm,
bloated, worsening constipation, etc. So
mhm.
you need to titrate it up, especially since everyone's low in fiber in their diet. And now
That's right.
all of a sudden, introducing large amounts can be tough on the GI, right?
Yeah, and the microbiome is amazing. It has a remarkable capacity to adapt, but it needs a little time, a few
Right.
days to a week, something like that. And then, the balance of various microbes, beneficial bacteria will start to adjust to the new fiber. But yeah, you just give them a little time to do that.
So the PGX formula through Natural Factors is part of the WellBetX family of products, and that also includes Berberine as a separate product, which Dr. Aaron and myself have used a lot through our 4 years of being here at Healthy Habit for our patients, and we've just gotten such really good results with both the Berberine and the PGX, part of that WellBetX team. Is Berberine something that they can be taken together, perhaps, in both of those WellBetX products?
Oh, very much so, yes. And there's so much really amazing research about this berberine and its benefits for the overall metabolism. Absolutely so helpful. And I'm not surprised to hear you're using it in practice because clinically it's so useful, as you know, for blood sugar control, which
Yeah.
then has benefits for the entire metabolism. So it really does complement, in fact, the effects that you will get from PGX, different mechanisms of action in terms of blood sugar helpers, but definitely complementary.
Would you agree that it could help with appetite regulation? Because now you're getting these blood
Mm.
sugar regulating herbs and that fiber, since most people have a fiber poor diet and then it causes overeating. Would that play a role with appetite?
Definitely, yeah. There's a few mechanisms here. First is the actual fiber will cause a filling effect in the stomach. The
Mm.
stomach, you feel full because you are full of fiber. Has stretches the receptors in the stomach, and that sends a message to the brain that you're full. But the fiber has no calories, and so you just feel satiated. And so adding that, in fact, to any food that you're eating helps you feel more full and satisfied with your food. But just as importantly, arguably more importantly, the PGX will help stabilize the blood sugar
Mm.
fluctuations. Blood sugar can be up and down with some people throughout the day. Every time the blood sugar drops, that will trigger cravings and appetite. So by keeping blood sugar stable, people simply have less of those cravings. So like we're talking about the type of ravenous cravings where you kill for a brownie or a muffin, something like that. That's a blood sugar craving or a blood sugar appetite. And you can level those out and simply have them, melt away.
Amazing, Dr. Kate. So informative. And this is going to also help with the inflammatory response in the arteries, right? If it's going to help prevent that oxidized cholesterol building up if you have more fiber and better blood sugar control, right?
Yes, that's huge. That is a big part of the inflammation picture as well as the cholesterol picture, maintaining blood sugar and minimizing the intake of sugar and highly refined carbohydrates is far more important than fats. Fats do play a role, but it's sugar and carb consumption and maintaining blood sugar that's even more important.
So tell us, what is the endothelium and how is this playing a role here in the inflammation, cardiac inflammation, premature death from cardiovascular issues? Tell us about the endothelium.
Yeah, the endothelium is where things get really interesting when it comes to heart health because again, thinking, to the cholesterol concept, I think a lot of people may still have that notion that our blood vessels are just like pipes that can get clogged, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely not the case for lots of reasons. But the main one is because of the endothelium. So this is this one cell layer thick lining, lines all of our blood vessels, and it is dynamic and active. The endothelium will release compounds that can dilate blood vessels, that constrict blood vessels, depending on what's needed. That has a healing function in the localized area. Absolutely, the endothelium can control inflammation, either localized or throughout, the body where this membrane is found. And so ultimately, when we think of heart health, which is really not just the health of like the beating heart, but all of our blood vessels, our goal is, and what is really happening is endothelial health,
Mm.
magnesium, essential fatty acids, all the things that we think of as being heart healthy ultimately are beneficial for the endothelium, then it is doing good things for our blood vessels.
Because that's where the buildup begins with those small, dense LDL particles. They literally get into the wall of the endothelium, right,
Mm.
and cause damage, and then the inflammation and starts building up into the plaque,
That's right,
basically.
and it's the body's attempt at healing, an injury, for example, that may be happening there,
Oh,
and then that can go awry or can kind of go sideways. But if you give the endothelium the nutrients that it needs to do that healing properly, then you don't see things going awry.
and what are your thoughts on sodium then? I think there's I think we should be in a healthy, there's a certain point where it becomes bad. Would you agree with that? Especially the type of salt being consumed? Like if someone's doing 3,300 milligrams a day, every day,
That's it.
forever?
And a lot of the research, people who are eating high sodium diets are getting that sodium from French fries and potato chips. And
Mm,
so it's part of the bigger picture.
right,
But we also don't want to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. The whole concept that we should have a salt-free diet or no, it's, nobody should be having any kind of sodium. That is
right.
also too far to the other way.
Sure.
Or that automatically a low salt diet is heart healthy. Some people have, for example, salt sensitive hypertension, as you know, and
Yeah.
others don't. So it is not a top concern for me when it comes to heart health. The fact that we typically have low magnesium intake is generally more important than sodium, unless somebody's really off the charts because they're having a super unhealthy diet anyway.
I know we have a magnesium bisglycinate product through Natural Factors. Is that the only option there, or how should we go about that? What other magnesium options are there with Natural Factors?
There are a couple of options. The main options that you'll see on the market and with natural factors, the two kind of heavy hitters, there's magnesium citrate, and that I think of as, I don't know, I refer to as cheap and cheerful. It's very affordable form of magnesium, consistently effective, lots of research behind it. But for some individuals, if they're sensitive to that, they find high doses of magnesium citrate can cause loose stools.
Mm.
Some people rely on that or take advantage of that for regularity, but others don't want that effect. So another great option is the magnesium bisglycinate. This is highly bioavailable, highly absorbable, great source of magnesium that does not affect gut or gastrointestinal function, so it won't cause loose stools for anyone. So for people who are sensitive to that, it's a little bit more expensive than the citrate form, but it's a really nice, well-absorbed form of magnesium.
And that comes in the powder, correct?
Yep, it comes in a powder as well as capsules. And so it's quite, it's flexible if you want to mix it in or put it into anything.
So how does someone know if they're a candidate then to add magnesium into their diet? Should they just assume they're low? Or I know I've done serum magnesium tests, and they're just everyone's pretty much normal in a blood test of magnesium. They say the red blood cell magnesium is a more accurate test, so you could do
Mhm.
either of those. But besides that, how can someone tell if they should add it into their supplement plan?
Well, the recommended daily intake of magnesium. Now, this is the, like Health Canada or US FDA, so that usually that's considered the bare minimum that you need to get by and be healthy, is 360 milligrams per day for women and 400 around approximately for men. So let's say just round numbers, around 400
400.
milligrams for everyone per day. So just look at what you're eating and see if you're getting even close to that. I guarantee most people, even with some effort, will have a hard time meeting that recommended daily intake. Um, and so that's where a magnesium supplement becomes really helpful for adults and children.
Yeah.
Recommended daily intake for like, I'm thinking off the top of my head, 9-year-old, something like 140 milligrams of magnesium per day. I don't know what kids are getting that unless they're eating massive amounts of leafy greens, nuts, and
Mm.
seeds every single day. Magnesium supplements are really helpful.
Okay, great. So tell us about CoQ10. This might be our first time going deep on CoQ10. It's such an important
Mm,
nutrient. The highest concentration of it can be found right there in the heart. So tell us
yeah,
about CoQ10.
that's right. CoQ10 it's often referred to as a vitamin-like molecule because it's not technically a vitamin, but it looks like one. And it's also called the cellular spark plug. That's because it plays a role in our mitochondria, so our energy producing centers. It will essentially throw and catch electrons as they get passed along the electron transport chain to make energy, to make ATP. And as it's doing this, CoQ10 also has a remarkable ability to mop up any rogue electrons or free radicals that are escaping this process. So super important in energy production, which is, yes, why you find it in such high amounts in high energy organs like the beating heart and your brain is always thinking. And it's another challenging one. We do make CoQ10 a little bit in our bodies for
Mm.
sure, make less of it over time and with age, as with so many things. But another sort of challenging one, certainly to get through diet.
So, like you mentioned, it's an energy intensive process that it's
Mhm.
involved in. So, as people age, would you agree their energy production just slowly going down with NAD and CoQ10, correct? So
Yeah,
that,
yeah, well
and
established.
especially if someone's on a statin, right?
Yes, so absolutely, public service announcement for anybody who hasn't heard yet, if you're on a statin medication, that will inhibit your body's ability to produce CoQ10, and CoQ10 supplement is really essential.
So we have a couple different options here. We have the 200 milligram. We have the 100 milligram. There's even the ubiquinol, the active CoQ10 option at 100
Mhm.
milligrams. So where does someone start? I know there's a difference in price point if you're doing the ubiquinol versus the just the all natural CoQ10 form. So give us
Mhm.
some ideas here.
Well, a little bit of chemistry or biochemistry to lay the foundation. CoQ10 does exist naturally in these two forms, ubiquinone and ubiquinol. And it will convert back and forth between these two forms as it's throwing and catching electrons, like I mentioned, as it does in the electron transport chain. So yes, you can buy ubiquinone and ubiquinol supplements. Ubiquinol is a little bit more effective and it's a little bit more expensive.
Hmm.
So you can get there with ubiquinone, like a standard CoQ10. It's a little bit more budget friendly. If cost is no option, not that it's that much more expensive, then you may want to shell out for the ubiquinol.
Sure.
Or if you are somebody with, a condition where you're really, the mitochondria are really challenged, for example, then maybe it's, worth spending that extra for the ubiquinol. Sort of that's where that I feel like kind of boils down.
Great. And so another recap of how someone should take that and what they're, if you can give like a top five list of why CoQ10 is so useful.
Yeah. So energy production, like I said, cellular spark plug works in the mitochondria to help produce energy.
Okay.
Also, fabulous free radical fighter, so antioxidant, help protect us against oxidative stress, which is ongoing. If you think about a single heart cell or a single brain cell can have 100,000 mitochondria.
Hmm.
Those mitochondria are all producing energy. They're also all producing free radicals. So CoQ10 really important to protect us from those free radicals. And then, well, geez, that's two, and you said five.
Well, that's good enough. That right there will wipe out half the mortality rates, or it's going to play a big role in cardiovascular health. So
It,
yeah,
it
that's
really
great.
is. And then, we talked about oxidation of cholesterol. So
Right.
antioxidants, again, goes back to that first really important point.
Yeah. So improved lipid balance, less oxidation of the bad cholesterol,
Supporting
energy
healthy blood
production.
pressure. Yep.
Perfect. Reducing inflammation in the endothelium. All really
Mhm.
important things. So some what should blood pressure be at? What's a good number that the two numbers that people should have on their mind?
Mhm.
The 120 over 80?
Yeah, that 120 over 80, guidepost or guideline is a good one. Seems to be like solid evidence that it is associated with good heart health, lowering risk of things like heart attacks and strokes. And I can't emphasize enough that hypertension, high blood pressure is not something to be ignored. Don't think it's going to go away on its own, or just that, just that's important thing to pay attention to. Cholesterol, yeah, not so much. High blood pressure, absolutely.
Right. You can't just look at it on its own, like you said. You got to look at the ratios, the inflammatory markers. Maybe add some apolipoprotein A1 and B in there, right? And some
Mm-hmm.
HSCRP,
Mm-hmm.
some C-reactive protein in that, and the blood pressure. Dr. K, we've talked all about PGX today, berberine, the WellBetX family, magnesium, the different types, the citrate, the bisglycinate, CoQ10. I'll save these last three for next time, which includes the theracuramin, vitamin K2, and the omega 3s. They're all so important for cardiovascular health. What's a good take home message today? Remember, the number one cause of death. Everyone knows at least someone in their family or a friend or someone that they've met throughout their life that's had a heart attack or stroke or some kind of heart disease issue. So give us a recap from today's conversation. It's important.
Well, I think that the big take home message is cholesterol isn't the be all and end all when it comes to being proactive about your heart
Right.
health and heart health risk factors. And that means that if you've had your cholesterol tested and it's normal, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're absolutely in the clear when it comes to heart health. You still want to be paying attention to all these other things that we're talking about. Or if your cholesterol is like a little bit elevated, don't stress about that either, but look at all these other factors like, exercise, blood pressure, magnesium intake, all of those other things. And so definitely there's a lot more to the heart health picture than just cholesterol.
Absolutely, like the omega-3 and omega-6 balance, right? So let's do a little
Yeah.
sneak peek maybe into our next discussion where we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about that. The way too high of an intake of omega-6 is coming in relative to omega-3s. Give us a little sneak peek on that, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll wrap it up.
These, two groups of essential fats, omega 6s and omega 3s, but we tend to get so much more omega 6 in the Western diet from things like vegetable oils,
Mm,
processed vegetable oils, and those kinds of things that are quite inflammatory. We already touched on inflammation, whereas the omega 3s, they are anti inflammatory and a little bit harder to come by. And so making an effort to get more of those in your diet, and sometimes that might mean a supplement, but that can really make a difference in balancing. It's all about balance with the omegas.
amazing. So what's a good starting point? Naturalfactors.com.
That's a great starting point for information on, yeah, everything we've been talking about.
Phenomenal. Natural Factors, all one word.com. You can also call our store at 602-252-6000. We can ship nationwide. And I want to thank you for your time, Dr. Kate. Always appreciate having you on.
You're welcome. Great talking to you.